This video will be the first of a series of videos, probably 2 or 3 videos in total, explaining how to use objects and classes in Delphi, grade 12 level work. The reason why there's going to be more than one video is because if we have to go through everything that is included in objects and classes, this video is going to be an hour and a half at least. So to make it into more sizable, usable chunks, the first section or the first video today will just be showing us how to create a class from scratch. Now, in order to show you, I'm going to be using the 2020 November IT paper, so the one from last year. This video is not about this paper, so this is not a video on how to do an old exam paper. This is just an example that I'm using. Right, we're going to be doing some things on our own here. So, for example, in this old paper, and in many, in fact, probably all exam papers, external ones, they will give you the class. They will not ask you to make a class from scratch. But because this video is to help you guys figure out how to use classes in the first place, we're going to start from the beginning and we are going to make a class from scratch. So I'm going to ignore the one that was included with this paper and we're going to make our own one. So let's get started. First thing we need to do is go to File, New, Unit. Now usually when we start a Delphi application, we click on VCL application, right? That includes a project, it includes a unit form and some other things as well. But we just want to add a unit. It's a blank unit which we are going to mold into the class that we want it to be. And there we go. So we have a clean unit. Unit 1 is its default name. I think the first thing we should do here is give it a save. Save all. The only thing it should ask me to save now is the unit, because that's the only thing that's not saved so far. And I'm going to call it transaction2 underscore u. So the transaction that's already here is the one that came with the exam paper, but we're going to ignore that one. Transaction2 underscore u. I'm going to add the underscore u at the end, just so that we know that this is a unit file, in case we ever wonder about that. There we go, save. So now it's added to my project. We can see it over here on the right hand side by our structure, well, it's not the structure section, but the whole project itself. Okay, the Delphi project includes the units, the project, and everything else like that. There's the main form. This is our new unit over here. All right, we can even see that the unit name has now changed to what we typed in. And so let's get started then. Underneath the interface section, we are going to say type, and now we're going to give our class its name. Transaction2 equals class. When I hit enter, it will add an end for me, which means I'm on the right track. Now this is the name of our class, transaction2. This over here is the name of the unit file, not the name of the class. So don't get those two confused. They are different. This is the unit name. This is the class's name. Inside this section here, we are going to say private and public. There we go. Underneath the private section is where we are going to add the attributes for this class. And underneath the public section is where we're going to add our constructor and all of the other methods. Remember, underneath the private section, we are going to declare these attributes that are only accessible by this class. The methods and everything need to be accessible by other units, like the main program unit. And so that's why it will be public. So there is a difference between the two. They're not the same. Anyways, this is now the basics of our class set up. If I start adding attributes now and methods or anything else, I will be doing a specific question. I will be doing the exam paper, or I'll be answering a question or writing a program that I want to write. So stopping over there this is the basics of creating a class. There's just one more thing. Our main unit here, our main program, will not be able to access the class until we add the unit name underneath the users section. Right, so it says users over there, transaction2 underscore u. So I've added it here already, and there it is. This will ensure that this main form can speak to our class and that they can communicate with each other. I'm not going to add anything else besides that, not yet at least. And so that is the basics of setting up a class. Now, before we end there, let's add some attributes and some methods. So in order to do that, we're going to have a look at our question. So this is again the 2020 November paper, final exam. Let's have a look at what they say here. These are the attributes. We start with F customer ID. So let's go ahead and type F customer ID. Why does it start with an F? Well, that doesn't really matter. When we see an F, we know that we are dealing with a private variable at least. Now this will be a string. How do I know it's a string? The South African identification number of a customer who is requesting to rent a container. Alright, it's a string because it's an ID number. An ID number will never ever be an integer. When you have a number and you want to use it for mathematical calculations, adding it together, subtracting it from each other, then you must make it an integer. But with an ID number, we're never going to add them together or do calculations on them. They need to stay as they are. Also, if you are born in 2004 or 2005, your ID number will start with a 0, 0405. If we make that an integer, the leading 0 will disappear because it has no value in a number, and that will mean your ID number is incorrect. So we must keep it as it is, as a string. The next one is F container size, a character that indicates the size of the container, S, M, or L. So I'll make that a char, F container size char. There we go. The next one is the F storage period, indicates the number of months that the container will be made available. So because they say number of months, I'm going to assume that's going to be an integer. F storage period, integer. And the last one there, F amount paid. The amount that the customer has already paid to use the container. Right. F amount paid. Because this is obviously a currency, it's an amount of money, I'm going to make it a real variable. Here we go. And these are our private variables. They are private, or attributes is the better term to use, attributes of the class. They are private because no other form, not even the main program, will be able to see or use these attributes. They belong solely to this class. Only this class can see them, knows about them, can change them or use them in a calculation. Okay, that's important to remember. That's what it means to be underneath the private section. So our main form here, our main program, has no idea that those attributes exist. All right. Now underneath the public section, we are going to create our methods. And we're going to start off here with a constructor, create. So the create is the name of the constructor. There should be no reason for you to use a different name besides create. Let's have a look over here what they say. Write code for a constructor method that will receive the customer ID, the customer size, or the container size, and the storage period in months as parameters. Assign these values to the respective attributes, and then set F amount paid to a default value of 0. So attributes. To fill F customer ID, that must come as an attribute, we'll use SID. And that will be a string. To fill the container size, we will, let's say, C size, because that's going to be a char. And the last one, F storage period, I'll just say I storage period, and that will be an integer. There we go. There is no parameter for F amount paid. Why? Because the question did not ask for it. Simple as that. Now let's go ahead and create this. Control-Shift-C to create our constructor over here. Right. So the point of the constructor is to initialize or instantiate our class, to create it, to set it up, and to fill or initialize the private variables. So that's what we do here. F customer ID is going to be equal to SID. F container size is going to be equal to C size. F storage period, I storage period. Alright, now we've used our three parameters to fill our attributes. But what about F amount paid? F amount paid was not included, so we're not going to ignore it. What we will do is we're going to set it to a default state. And you should do this even if the question did not ask. Anything that is not included over here, not included in the parameters, should be set to a default state. So F amount paid, we'll set it to 0.0. Even if you just say 0, that's fine, but I'm saying 0.0 because it is a real data type. Okay. Now, what is SID and where are we getting this information from? Let's have a look. Our main form over here contains the ID number, the container size, and the storage period in months. So don't worry about that for now. Later on in part 2 or part 3, we will be collecting this information and then we will be sending it to the class via this constructor parameter, and we'll be filling the private variables like that. Okay, so just a little bit of patience until we get to that stage of the project. And that's about it. This is the basis, the basics of starting a class, sorting out the private variables and the constructor. Anything else that we add now as methods underneath the public section will be expanding our program. But what we have so far is enough to sort out our class and get it started. So we'll end here for this one, and in part 2 we will carry on.